Trust me, I know this. For 4 or 5 years in a row, while I was supported by my now ex husband, my business was a loss. That's not only a red flag for the IRS, but it's really not a business. If it were paying your bills, or if you were going to ask for a loan or seek investors, no one in their right mind would say yes to that. So don't fool yourself if your partner or a parent is gifting you money. And so you look on the outside as if you're a business with revenue, expenses, and a profit margin, while inside your books show something else. I'm Deborah Agates, and you're listening to Fitness Marketing Mastery, where I share marketing and sales strategies and some really out in front tips with you so that you can build a business and a life that you love with really the freedom and the money that you want to do the things you love to do with the people you love to do them with. Building a business may be actually the easy part, but no one of us wants to paint ourselves into a corner where we're getting up early, staying up late, working on weekends, and can never really shut down. Which brings me to today's question. Are you an employee or an entrepreneur? Which one feels like the best fit for you? Or if you have been an employee, maybe something rocked your boat, say like a pandemic, or just time is making you think maybe a little differently about becoming an entrepreneur. I've got 11 questions and a few stories to share with you so you can decide. And by the way, there is no right answer. There's no one right answer. There's the right answer for you right now. And I've got what I hope will be a lot of inspiration. So let's dive into this episode. First of all, letting you know it was brought to you by the How to Build a Freebie. Talk about meta. But if you don't have a high converting freebie, an offer that you make to somebody who you may have met online, social media, that offers them an opportunity to get to know you and the things that you can help them with in exchange for their email, where if you don't know it, your email is the most important real estate you have. You have no control over social media and you shouldn't really be selling. I know that word is nasty, should, but really social media is not the place to sell. It's the place to create relationships. So don't make your offers there on social. You're hurting your organic traffic and relationships with potential clients if you do. But this How to Build a Freebie will help get you going in the right direction. Okay, let's dive in. Do you wonder? Have you wondered, should you be an employee or an entrepreneur? There are a lot of reasons why I became an entrepreneur. The entire first 2 weeks of this year, it would be very easy to say, I've done none of them. Why I think most of us go into business is because we feel like we're now better. And I don't mean to say that in relationship to somebody else, but I do think we see there's a problem that's not being fixed. And because we acknowledge there's a problem and we actually feel we have the skills or the talents and the desire to fix those problems, I think many of us feel compelled. Like we have the responsibility to do it. I know that's how I felt. I actually heard that, saw that, I think for the first time on the movie, the original National Treasurer. Do you remember that one? Nicholas Gage. Gage. Got that wrong. But he was the main character. And, he really said it as he was reading, from one of our all-time historians. That quote just says, look, if you see a problem, rather than talking about it, you need to take some action and do something, or you're going to be part of the solution. And that was what's true for me. And I think we go into it with some real purpose. We want to make some real change. We may want to have a little bit more freedom in our jobs, and I'll talk a little bit about that. We may want to, make more money or make money in a way that makes us happier than we're doing working for somebody else. But I think there is the real thing that keeps an entrepreneur in the business is believing in what they're doing, but truly beyond that, feeling like it's your purpose. Like you couldn't think of something else that you would be doing. That even if you did something else that you might be good at, because let's face it, we have lots of skills and talents and ways that we can play out what it is we do in society, but this would be the thing you do anyway. For me, that was true back in college for sure, but then even after college, as I had a full-time job, I was working at the front desk in what was then one of the largest fitness facilities in Iowa. And it was a big deal to say, well, I worked here, right? And I was like the face of the business because working at the front desk for, 8 hours a day for 5 days of the week. I mean, if I was the first person people saw it, and that was kind of cool. But at home, early morning, evenings, my days off, I wrote articles. I wanted to educate people. I wanted to go deeper than just the superficial teaching of aerobics and, working at the front desk and getting people who called in to the right person. That was okay. And I knew I was playing a role, a necessary one in the business, but those of us, I think, who are more entrepreneurial spirits are the people who are most likely to want to go and do extra, want to speak if there's an opportunity to speak, want to write the blog, do the podcast. Even if there's no revenue tied to it, we would do those things. So I'll say that even before we start, but listen, it's not all roses. I have spent the majority of my time in the last 2 weeks, which happened to be, as I'm recording live, the first 2 weeks of 2022, doing things I am not good at. I've been procrastinating doing them, which amplifies the negative impact of them, really, right? It's the dreading, like, I don't know how to do this, but I have to say this. I literally have to tell on myself. I am doing this podcast sitting in front of a brand new computer where I'm plugged into my software. And by the way, if you're not familiar with it and you're thinking podcast, I use Zencaster and love it. You can do audio only. You can do audio video, or you can do audio if you're interviewing somebody, say, but turn the video on so you can see each other. You don't step on each other's words. Okay, enough about that. But I have a new iMac 24 Plus. I have been able to single-handedly over the whole course of like a full week, step by step, put in a swing arm for my microphone, plug in the new microphone, plug that all into the router, which is giving me better sound, plug in my earphones, and have it all work. Not to mention with the help of two people at Apple and one at who helped me with my Focusrite Scarlett. So thank you. Saying a prayer for all of you. But I'm loving it. So there is a payoff, right? So I anticipate I'm probably going to be wanting to make more podcasts because I'm like, this is so fun. And the quality of the sound for you is the real payoff. So I know what a difference it makes. And here's the deal. 10 years ago, when I started, this podcast was actually my first. It was then called Voice for Fitness Professionals Podcast. I still like that name. That is actually my LLC. But it was then, and then 2 years later, I started Flipping 50, the podcast, which also started with another name. And don't be afraid to change your name because clarity is so much better than cleverness. And at one point, I thought, well, you was a good name. And I don't don't contest that, but flipping 50 says so much about who I who I serve and how I serve them, and also piques a little curiosity. So, what's in a name, right? But I digress. So let's dive back in here. I have spent the majority of my time these last 2 weeks doing things I am not good at, and I've been procrastinating them, but I would not trade it for anything else. So, I want to tell you this though, just because you're now in charge of your own time, say you are an entrepreneur, try it on, just try that feeling on, like you own your own business. I still have to say no. Like in the beginning, I had tons of time and no revenue. That was uncomfortable for someone who is used to taking action, seeing results. So it was discipline that made me say no to opportunities so that I could focus on what will bring in revenue eventually, even if not today. So more often than I did say yes, but not necessarily for the right reasons. I went to get the ego hit that comes from being asked to present to a room full of your own peers or to author this or that for them. But I did consciously think whether or not it was the best investment of my time, money, and energy. Back then, probably not. I probably did blow up the credibility benefit that I was going to get from doing it and use the media exposure to my advantage. It's anybody's guess as to whether that was really productive or some of those trips would have been better off not taken because they were expenses. Just in case you don't know this, when you first begin as a presenter, I mean, unless you are like a household name, you pay for your plane ticket, you pay for your hotel room, and you may not get a stipend for your presenting. You are given the opportunity to present for an agency in a lot of cases, not in all, but something to consider when you think about it being so very glamorous. It's for me always been it's a give back. It's even when you are paid and sometimes reimbursed for the flight or the hotel, that is not doesn't compare by any means to the revenue that I could generate, say, in 3 days working for my business or creating a new product. So it is about something different. It is about turning back around, remembering all the people who helped me learn along the way, get coaching, mentoring for free, and doing the same for somebody else who's got an idea or a gift that really needs the encouragement to stick with it when it's not working perfectly. I've been there for a long time, but I'm out. Thank you. And yet there's always going to be growing. So when I'm growing, we're all going to struggle. Like some of this upgrading, I am starting my first real full-time employee. I've had contractors, a small team, mighty army of 5 or 6 contractors, and we're moving forward. So by next year, I hope to have at least 3 full-time employees and to be able to offer them benefits. And all of that, I've had to frame my mind around, wait a minute, this isn't an expense. This is an investment. And that's why I'm here. I'm really here. And if you think about it, this is an entrepreneur mindset that you're here to create jobs, opportunities for other people to be one of those companies that they love to work with and feel the freedom to do the things they want to do. And I think there's always this, if you hire great people who are self-starters, they don't need a babysitter or micromanagement, the chance is there that they are going to want to leave and start something on their own. And I think that we want to look at as that's success. if you can't give them the growth they want within your company, be happy that they want to do something else outside of your company. So, a lot of philosophy in this episode, but I hope it's resonating with you. And you're also thinking, whether you're an employee right now, thinking about the kind of boss you have, the kind of culture environment that you have at work, and if it's, something that you're thriving in. I know that for, about 7 years, I was personal training director at a facility. And before that, I was group fitness director. And decades before that, I was, also programming director for other sites and locations. And I can tell you that if I could go back now, I would probably do things quite a bit differently in the way that I provided the culture of what we were doing. So at that point, I was not ready to be an entrepreneur. I wasn't ready because I think I would have probably had people quit on me. And, I needed guidance about, how to do it better and keep an environment where people were motivated to do the things we wanted to be done. Okay. So even now, saying no is something that when you're an entrepreneur, you're not just going to be like, okay, I can do whatever I want to. I can spend my day however I want to. But it's got to be more than that, right? So now I've grown to the extent that I have to say no to things that I actually really want to do. I recently had the opportunity to author a chapter for NASM, and I love them and the work that they do, but I am having to base my time spend on what is best for the company I run. It's not just about what I want to do. I've been asked to do an adult education course for my alma mater's retirement or retired alumni community. But again, I have to consider what it is that I won't be able to do with that time and energy. And now, as I bring in more people, who else will be disappointed or let down, not given the attention and the support they need? So they need a certain amount of information from me to make their own decisions in their areas they're hired for. They need permission, and they won't all know that immediately, like what they have the authority to do and not do, when to ask, when not to ask. And if I'm doing something else, I'm not able to answer those questions for them quickly. So it's challenging. And I've been invited recently to present at prestigious conferences that I used to love presenting for, and yet I have to say no. So these might be things that you would say recharge your batteries and you love. And at one time I would have too, but I realized that the writing for somebody else, the traveling, the expense of that time away puts a crunch, not just on me now, but everybody else on my team too, if I'm not accessible. So it's a tough decision. There are things I'll say yes to because being out in front of more people is good for me. It's good for our business. I mean, that is marketing, right? And sometimes when it's media or it is a conference, if I'm trying to reach fitness professionals and tell them how I can help them, that is good exposure. But again, you have to come back to what else is happening right now. What are our priorities? And those are the kinds of tough decisions that I honestly didn't anticipate probably 8 years ago when I really was starting out. I mean, I was worried about the day to day and how I'm paying college tuition, in a few months again, here it comes. But so glad that I was able to do that. So I share this with you because if you're a personal trainer starting out or you're already out on her own, you may be wondering, especially in this climate with gyms not doing so well and online training really not requiring a gym to do it, if you're best suited for an employee or being an entrepreneur. So having been both in my 38 years, yet literally from the beginning, I think always having something independently of my own, I can weigh in. And I'm also tapping into others who've managed and owned, hired, trained, and fired and watched employees quit, leave, and go it alone for a look at who thrived, survived, moved on to becoming an employee again. Stay tuned. But I want to say this, first of all, before we even start, having tried it and failed to reach the success you wanted is still a win. So, along the way, it's our failures always that teach us far more than the successes do. If you go the entrepreneur route, I would absolutely make sure that you have somebody who will keep you accountable. If you have a spouse and a reason, there's no sweat, it's a disadvantage. I thought for years I wanted a safety net. I was like, I want a safety net. I have no net. And then it was my husband at the time, my ex-husband now, reminded me, I'm your net. But I just felt like that kind of pressure. And we were then talking about a brick and mortar location. I didn't want it. Didn't want that kind of pressure. But I did start something else on my own. But trust me, that didn't go all that well. For 4 or 5 years, while supported by my husband, my business was a loss, right? So expenses were greater than the revenue. That's not only a red flag for the IRS, but that is really not a business. If it were supposed to pay your bills, if you were going to ask for a loan based on those records or seek investors, no one in their right mind would say yes to this. So don't fool yourself if your partner or a parent is gifting you money so that you look on the outside as if you're a business with revenue and expenses and profit margin, while inside your books shows something quite different. It's not me. It's not just me. I've seen this happen all too often with other fitness professionals too. They've been given money to get started, and then they've been bailed out by investors when it wasn't working. They've not only been willing to quit the day job, or they've not been willing to quit the day job. And that's important, by the way, without that kind of pressure. Like, this is my job, which if you're listening and it feels like a bad thing, you know, think about that. But you don't have a reason to make it work if you've got a net, if you're going to be okay, even if it doesn't work out. I would sincerely put it on paper, take it to a CPA, get your LLC, make it a business. So, how prepared are you? Here's how willing and maybe naive I was. It was going to work. So, I quit my job, barely worked for 14 months. And this is when I'm 49, by the way, 30 years into a career. And I had it so good. So good. I was making, in between 1 and 200,000 annually in the middle of the Midwest with zero debt, owned my house, owned everything, car and house outright. I mean, a lot of people would have said, God, oh my gosh, I would take that right now today, right? Because so much has changed. But I had this itch and I was like, I need to do more. I'm not reaching my potential and I'm feeling like I'm bored in this spot and I can't go any further. So there's a time when you just reach that point. But I was barely working and truthfully, for not just that 14 months when I was like figuring it all out and starting it and taking lots of courses, and probably 3 more months when I was folding towels. Yeah. Yeah, truly. 50 years old, I went back to folding towels at the front desk. It was a great place to meet people, meet the members, get to know people, have them recognize my face. But what I think about the time I put in there where I actually probably should have been, working, it was valuable because I needed to connect with people again. You just spend too much time behind that computer and you start thinking you're something you're not, and you're not having the social interactions that we all know, in this last 2 years all too well that we need for support. But there was never, well, it's probably not fully true. I remember looking at jobs at universities online, considering applying to teach again. But there was never a time when I thought, this won't work. I mean, I sold my house. I dipped into retirement funds. Whatever it took, I was willing to do it. and it was scary AF. Just we'll keep it clean. So when you have that fallback, it's not a formal relationship where you'd pay it back or with interest. It's holding you back. Your business plan should look strong enough that you can make it work. If it wouldn't be comfortable asking for a loan and showing how you're going to use that loan, really take a good look at whether you'll get ahead or just further in debt, even if just emotionally, if you don't make changes. So, no matter what you want to do, there's a way to scale it, but some plans just aren't scalable, and you need to think about that. There's the fact that nothing is guaranteed. Who would have predicted 2 years ago, at this even moment in time? So we are just about to the end of the month. And depending on when you're listening, 2 years ago, I had a live retreat I hosted in Scottsdale, and still we were all like, totally naive that, there was going to be anything like or close to a pandemic. My About a month and a half from this time 2 years ago, my brother and sister-in-law came to visit, and we were like lucky to get them on a plane and leaving, because people were kind of panicking and going home from spring breaks early and not sure what was coming. And it was then that we started all talking about toilet paper like it was gold, and what was going on in different areas. So nothing is guaranteed. But I personally wouldn't want to have a brick and mortar business in 2020 or 2021. And right now, I still wouldn't invest in one. It's improving, I think, but there's still a lot of doubt, and there's a lot of wondering what's next, and fear of getting sick. But it doesn't make an online business a no-brainer still. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to rifle through these 11 questions and give you a little feedback on each one. But what I'd love for you to do is, if you haven't answered it for yourself before I start talking about it, pause. What's the answer? Do you like to have specific hours and be able to arrive and leave work at a specific time? Now, you might already be able to guess that if that's you, you will do far better as an employee, because I can tell you there are times when, I think a week and a half ago or so, I was talking with support for my webinar platform at 5 a.m. in the morning before a day of a retreat coming up. Last minute questions. I was like, oh my gosh, hope somebody can answer these. And, there are times when there's deadlines, things have to be done, and someone else on my team might need something, and I need to get it done today so that they can have it tomorrow. And if I don't set that rule that we keep our honor our deadlines, nobody else will. So the hours, definitely not specific. Question 2. Do you like to have a dependable paycheck that's predictable every time? And that too, for the most part, is, if you'd say yes to this, is absolutely, it is all employee all the time. You may have a position where you get some commission on top of it, but most personal training positions are not 100% commission at this point. Most are based on an hourly rate, maybe, and then above some, depending on how well or how long you've been, how much you're retaining your customers, your clients. But dependable. One of the things I like, however, about being an entrepreneur is that it's not dependable, that the sky's the limit, that I can do whatever I want to. And going to work for somebody else, and I experienced this most in my life when I was teaching for university. It didn't matter if I taught a terrible class or a great class, really, right? I could have just like read the slides, read the notes, been dead, and just a warm body in that classroom, and I would have earned the same amount of money. And I didn't like that. I really and I didn't teach like that, but I wanted to be rewarded when it went well. And as an entrepreneur, you have that. Do you prefer to have your pay reflect what you did, your effort, and how successful it was? And there you have it. That's the entrepreneur's yes. Do you like to grow, constantly learn new things that challenge you? So, clarifying here, this is not do you love to go to fitness conferences and learn new techniques and strategies for doing sit ups and using TRX and medicine balls? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about setting up the damn microphone, the damn router, the making sure you've erased your old computer, getting up the new one. So right now, I mean, I am my executive assistant who starts tomorrow still would not come over here and do that, right? She doesn't even have to live in the same town as I do. So, you've got to do all of that. All of the pieces that are parts of upgrading. And, I'm staring at a bookshelf where I've got a box with wires. I don't even know where they go to for electronics that I probably haven't used, and making wise decisions and all that. It's learning to grow, right? So if you like those kinds of challenges, being stretched outside of your box, then yes, this is for you. Now, you might experience a little bit of that as an employee, but I think more depending on how big the business is that you're working for, it's much more efficient and effective for, there to be somebody who is tech, to be somebody who, is maintenance, to be somebody who is you, who does the fitness programming. So the chance is that you're going to stay a little bit closer to in your mode of genius when you are working for somebody else, at least for the role you've been hired for. Do you like to make decisions, or do you prefer to have them made for you? That's kind of a challenging question. I don't know about you. I really am like, no, I don't want somebody to make decisions for me. Right. And I think that's a little bit of catch 22 when you're an employee, where you really don't think, I don't want responsibility. I don't want the stress or the weight of the advertising or the marketing costs and making the decisions of should I spend this, and no guarantee of a return on that. But I also don't want somebody to tell me like what color uniform shirt I have to be in, or that my clothing isn't appropriate, so I have to go home unless I'm going to change. So there's probably a little bit of both, but I think you need to really pay attention to which one of those is the most like you. Do you like to make those decisions, or would you prefer to have somebody make them on your behalf? Do you want to have someone to consult, to mentor you, and to lead you? And, this one is probably could go both ways. So I can say that as an entrepreneur, I joined a community 5 years ago, going on 6 now, and I've never looked back. But, I've joined masterminds and I've spent well over $160,000 in the last 5 years in masterminds to pay to have a leader, a guide, a mentor who's been there and already done it, or who brings in speakers, trainers who've done the things that I'm doing. And that too is, where I've turned back around, and for, more than 12 years, I've done masterminds and coached individuals who wanted to do their own thing or grow in a niche, even if they worked for us at a facility. And I think you really want to consider what kind of a role do you want to have. And when you are an employee, generally you've got some of that built in. Now, not every employee has a kind of a leader or a mentor that they really want or wish they had, but it is built in. You've got some kind of somebody that you answer to. As an entrepreneur, you really have to go looking, and you'll potentially pay for it. But and money well spent, by the way. So if you don't have a mentor or coach who's already done or doing what you want to do, I would say that is the first thing you've got to do, because no one does it alone. You need a village. You need somebody in your corner saying, look, here's what works right now, and here's what I know doesn't. Here's, where we can get more information if we don't have it. Those kinds of people who are connected. We know people, 4 or 5 deep. We know who does have the answer if we don't have it ourselves. Do you like freedom to do your job when you work the best, as long as you get the job done? Now, you can do this as an employee if you have the right boss and you've earned trust over time and you have a track record of getting it done. I walked away from that opportunity. That is where I was. I had the ability to come and go as I pleased if I hit my numbers, and I did. And as long as the boss called and said, what's your number right now? And trust me, that was running tab was right beside the phone. I'm like, here we are. He'd be like, okay, all right then. Nothing else. That'll be it. Right. And of course, there were months when it wasn't going so well, and yet overall, if we could look at 4 out of 5 months, or we could look at the year overall, and we were up a certain percentage, sometimes those ebbs and flows have to be a part of rolling through. So you definitely, of course, can do this more as an entrepreneur. Now, this coming week, I'm not looking forward to my schedule as much. And here's why. Because I've got to put times in my calendar when I have to be available for other people. And it doesn't mean generally any of my staff call me. Literally, I was on a walk yesterday on a Saturday afternoon. I was on a walk and it was probably 1:00. And 2 of my staff called me, and they were thinking business as well, and just said, question, question, question. And they're like, do you need anything else from me? And I am just like, no, but did I say I love you? I mean, right? They're thinking about what we're going to need next week. And I'm just telling you, I'm feeling really smart for having hired them. Really smart, really lucky. Somebody's watching over me, because those are good people who are a couple steps ahead of you, don't always need you to tell them to do it. So if you are one of those people who is, have you thought about this? Or here's the way we're doing this, and here's how that could be automated or better. And have you looked at that? That is what you want. But I want to come back to this question. Do you like the freedom to do your job like that? When you work the best, like I work best early in the morning. I'll get up at 5 in the morning and get started and have more done probably before 8 or 9 in the morning than a lot of people get done all day. And then I will probably go for a workout or a walk and get away before business meetings, so I'm fresh again. And then in the afternoon, I will have to pull away, and I might do a little work in the evening too. That is how I love to work. And to talk to other people who are not like me, who have gone to work at a certain time and had the commute, and then they got there and then they left and couldn't wait for lunch. What they will say is, you have to work all the time. And I'm like, really? Is that how you see it? You're saying that to me while we're out here on a 2.5, 3-hour hike. Seriously? I mean, it's like, I chose to do this with my day. A lot of people cannot choose to have that kind of flexibility. You would have to take a day off, right? Or paid vacation, or use those days up. Or it's like, I don't. When I go back for that 11 o'clock appointment, I do have to be back. I'm going to be lit up, on fire, because I was outside, doing something I love. So it's like, know how you work the best. Don't expect anybody else to get it or need to. Don't you need them to get it. But if you know that you will run harder, if you can work with a little bit more flexibility, either ask for it in your role because you might be surprised to find you can get it. Or, consider maybe, being an entrepreneur would be better for you. Do you have a creative problem solving mindset that everything is figure outable? Because I guarantee you, you need to, right? It is. And yet there will be problems like today. Oh my gosh, I'm looking at, there's got to be 10 boxes in here, like the box for the swing arm and the prism to hold the microphone, and the box for the microphone, and the box for the router, and the box for the new computer, and the box for the cords that actually I think I bought too many of them that have to go back. They will tell you you need a lot of things you don't, right? But I'm like, this is a mess in here, but I'm in heaven because the sound quality is so much better on this podcast. I can't wait to release it. Okay. Please comment on the show notes that yes, that, $500 was worth it. Deborah, thank you for doing that for us. Appreciate it. Thanks. Okay. So, do you have the desire or ability to lead and to mentor others? Let me just tell you the irony. I was leading a team, right? I had a team of we were building that up between 20 and 24 personal trainers as I left, and that was probably double in size from where I started. And not that we didn't hire and fire in between that and the growing pains. But when I left, it was like, I am stuck. I'm having a hard time, with different departments. I feel like we're limited by what we've got going on here. And I want customer service to be so much better. And I want certain things to change. And I of course, I'm one person. There's 90 that work in this, business. And so we're not going to change all of them, and we're not going to change. And so maybe it's just time for both of us. This is the best thing. And, doing something on your own, I think the fantasy is, well, I can call all the shots. It'll be the quality I want it to be. And then there's the, okay, well, if I'm going to grow, I'm now out of time. And so I first of all, I needed somebody to do the tech side of things for me because I couldn't do it and didn't want to, right? So I wanted to learn it. I wanted to know what I needed to know. And I still do a lot of things behind the scenes, and I probably always will because I know marketing, for others. I'm what I call not a fitness marketing expert, but a fitness marketing surgeon, helping you find the right words, use them at the right time for the right people. And I like to think I do it for myself, and that nobody else can write emails or sales page copy the way I can to connect with my audience, because I mean it. I mean, and it is heartfelt. And, I want them to feel the urgency that I have for them, but I also want them to feel the authenticity. And so it's not fake, it's full of integrity. It is what I would tell my mom or my sister. And that is, you better get started right now. I mean, I don't know what you're waiting for. And if you think you have time, or you're going to wait until you get sick, but you better do this. And nobody on my team can bring it like that. And I think only I can in my voice, at least right now. So, do you have the ability to lead others, though, who can spot, when there is something out of place that doesn't fit your voice? I have to pull other people in order to be able to grow. So, you will come back to that point, even if you want to leave because you want the ease of just doing it for yourself and no employees. You will end up leading or mentoring anyway at some point if you're going to scale. Do you take personal responsibility for your work? Are you self-initiated, self-motivated? You're a self-starter. You don't need somebody else to observe you. You're the best kind of employee, first of all. People will find you, want you, and never want to let you go. And it still can be great for you to start as an employee and learn so much from somebody else in the way that business operates. You'll learn what you want to continue, what you don't want to. But it also says at some point, if not now, you may be an entrepreneur really at heart. Do you prefer to work with a team or work as an individual or leader with the vision? What do you want? I mean, do you want to be a team member? So obviously you're an employee there. And, it's not that you as the owner can't be a team member, but you really have to step out of that. You are the vision. You have a team, but it is your team. You're the captain, you're the coach. And they're going to look to you to set the vision, to set guidelines and certain just, boundary lines that you can do this, don't do this. Let's, maybe earn this authority or permission to do it, but I want to see you in action first and hear your thoughts on how you would problem solve that. As an entrepreneur, keep this in mind. You're never off. And here's what a good friend of mine who's more than 40 years into his career, and the final ones of those years ending in pandemic, right? How's that for a gut punch? But the comment was, if you're not insanely driven or pressure isn't good for you, you will probably be happier as an employee. And I can echo that. It's really what I meant by, if you have a net, you don't really have to be successful because your husband actually earns the money, or you've got a real job and that's how you look at it, that you can't step away because you don't think really you could be as successful running your own business as your real job, right? And I'm teasing you a little bit, but I do it because if you really want to do this, don't keep saying you want to do it, make it happen. Chances are you can always go back and get a real job if you don't do it, but you will never know. And I wonder, will you wonder, will you be disappointed at some point that you didn't actually try? But you've got to love that pressure and run hard because you have it. I will tell you that any employee with an entrepreneurial spirit will do better today. You find employers who hire for jobs they want done with the description of success of the job. And you're the kind of person who wants the freedom to problem solve and handle things with guidelines and maybe a set of values, along with latitude to complete it in the way that you can do it. You will probably still do better. You'll find positions that you like doing and that feel like you control to some extent what you make or how you're able to experience your job. I'm moving more to hiring the people who have the skills beyond mine and defining success for each role, not creating job descriptions. When somebody doesn't get the job done or needs constant reminding when they've got a task already assigned to them, they probably aren't, somebody I'm going to keep coming to long term. So it's important that, you realize that, no longer is, here's your job description and then you just sit down and here's what you're going to be doing. It's instead of the doing of that anybody can do, but they might do it badly and they might do it really well, that you get a measure of success. And that's what you're running for. So as an entrepreneur, you're always free, right? You have the freedom to do the work when you do it best. And you're free to take the afternoon or the week. You're free to make decisions in the morning and implement them in the afternoon. You're free to be inspired and put ideas into action. You're free to decide the direction of your business, who you serve, and how you serve them. As an employee, you're always or almost safe. You're secure. Now, we talked about the pandemic, right? That's not a given. You're certain what you'll earn and when it will come. And I can personally tell you that just before I was leaving my safe and secure position, I had a few conversations with my boss about changing the way that I was getting paid because they had never considered the program I was in charge of would grow to this level. And my commission override was growing right along with it. And I said, don't do that. If I don't have a reason to run hard, it won't be so fun for me. And that was knowing that slower months of revenue when my paycheck went down would still have meant a consistent income. I was still like, no, if you want me to perform my best, you won't do that. And I don't know where that would have gone had I stayed, but I like knowing what I do gets a result. I'm in control of that. My son, his first couple of years out of college, was looking for the right fit. I don't know if you're listening, if you are the proud owner of a millennial or not, but maybe you can identify with this. As he tried a couple of different jobs and positions, I suggested that he considered his own business. He was like, no way. Why would I want that kind of responsibility? And of course, I'm looking at him in the middle of responsibility and pressure. And then we discussed management because he was outperforming everyone in his first 5 months on a job, including those who'd been there for 12 months. And again, he's like, no way, I just want to do my own thing. Until a couple years later. He's considering both of those things. And I can say that for you, you may think that you'd never want that. You'd never want to be an entrepreneur until you do. So if being an employee, learning the ropes from others is most appealing to you right now, there are jobs. And later, you may want to revisit when you have a bigger skill set, more experience under your belt, more ideas about what works and what doesn't, what you're not able to do in your current situation that you could if you were working for yourself. We work a significant part of our lives. And it's important to have purpose in what you do every day. So there you have it. A long-winded one, right? 11 questions for, are you an employee or an entrepreneur? And I would love to hear from you below the show notes in this episode. And I will put that at fitnessmarketingmastery.com/employee or entrepreneur. And I'd love to hear right now, where do you see yourself and what are you thinking for your future? If you would share that, I'd be grateful. And I don't know, but I think the world needs us, whether you are an employee or an entrepreneur right now, more than ever. So what are you waiting for? Go get them.